Hey, what is going on, everybody? I wanted to talk today about my experience working in a county jail for almost 10 years. I worked in the medical unit. I was a medical records clerk. I had a friend that was a nurse there. It helped me get the job, and one of the reasons I've never been anywhere more than 2 years. I worked there for almost 10 years, so for the most part, it had its days, had its moments, but for the most part, I loved and dug every minute of it, every second of it, every day. It was very exciting with the inmates. Just constantly like new stories popping up, things you just never heard about before. Until I worked there. I don't have as good of outlook on society as I used to. That's one of the downfalls. I thought most people were pretty good. I thought the crimes, only happened in really bad neighborhoods. I figured, because I've always lived in the suburbs, I figured, something like that, murder, that doesn't happen in the suburbs, but it does. It could happen anywhere. And some of these people, weren't lifelong criminals. Some of them, just hit a rough patch in life. They just flipped out, lost a job or, got divorced, lost their home, whatever, and just went off the deep end. So, yeah, I worked there for almost 10 years, and amazingly, the 10 years I worked there were only like two bomb threats, but surprisingly, the first day I worked there was a bomb threat, and for about an hour, we were on lockdown. We just had to we had to all go to one area. They had to do, to make sure everything was clear before we went back to work, and they had to do a head count. And yeah, first day we were, last hour, just kind of sitting around chit chatting, like, wow, this is pretty cool. This is easy money. But the second time, I was thinking, like, oh my God, is God trying to send? This is my first day, and it's a bomb threat, and like, is God trying to tell me something here? That this may not be the right job for me. And I asked one of the nurses, I said, oh, does this ever happen before? And she said, oh yeah, this happens every once in a while. I'm like, okay. And this jail, it was a county jail, and in the Chicago, about an hour west of Chicago. That's where I lived, in the suburbs, an hour west of Chicago, about 30 miles west of the downtown loop, downtown area by Lake Michigan. And we had anything from like the most severe felonies to the most minor. I mean, we had everything from murder all the way down to harassment by telephone, like or vandalism, minor misdemeanors, and anywhere depending on the time of the year, the population went anywhere from like 500 to 700 inmates, and it was like two towers. The medical unit was I think north of one of the towers. Yeah, we had like two towers, and one tower there was 10 cell blocks, and about 50, anywhere from like 50 to 60 people in one cell block. So one tower had like 6 cell blocks, and the other tower had 4. 9 of them were for the men, and then there was one just for the women alone. And we also had an infirmary where we kept. There was like maybe anywhere from 5 to 20 people back there. That was kind of like used for. Originally, it was only supposed to be used for people that were really sick, injured, protective custody. But it ended up that we got so overcrowded that we had to use that for overload. And we also had like one of the cell blocks was just kind of like an intake cell block. Some of the it was usually where the minor crimes were. Some of the guys would stay there permanently, but most of them ended up, it was kind of like called classification. Most of them would stay there for maybe like a day or so until we figured out the best place to put them. And we did have like one or two cell blocks where it was like the most severe crimes that I actually kind of got pretty nervous when I occasionally had to go out to those cell blocks, and that's where I kept a lot of the real severe crimes, the murders, the gangbangers, just people that were problems, and it was kind of how should I put it? It's kind of like you're screwed either way, 6 to 1 one way, half a dozen to one the other way. It's like you couldn't win either way. When it came to the gangs, like we couldn't keep them together because if we did, they could plot an escape, they could plot an attack, especially on the correctional officers, which ended up happening anyways. But what we did is we kind of had to, kind of mix the gangs. Had to kind of, you couldn't keep them together, so because that would be a problem. But we had to keep them separate. But rival gang members, it was kind of an issue too. There were always fights, and that was pretty exciting. Seeing that happen, and we had a lot of like drug seekers in there. A lot of guys, faking injuries, faking illness to try to get some good drugs. And in jail, there's only so much you can get. The budget is limited. It's pretty not the best healthcare, but it's cheap healthcare. I always say to tell people, I'm not encouraging you to go to jail, but I said if you want cheap health care without insurance, I'm like, that's the place to go. And it's the same for everybody, regardless of whether you have health insurance or not, whether you're on Medicaid, Medicare. To see a doctor or a dentist or a nurse, it was like $10. Follow-ups were free. I think to get an X-ray it was like $5. Prescriptions were $3, and I think like for optical care, like contact lenses, were maybe like $1.50, and we also gave them like free reading glasses. And we would also send them out because some of them would need more than reading glasses. And if they needed that, we'd do like an eye exam first, and then we'd all other issues, medical issues too. We'd send them out to specialists if we had to for surgeries, things like that. We got a lot of drug seekers, and like some of them would there were people that were homeless. There was one, so they get arrested. In the wintertime, Chicago gets so cold, so they would purposely like commit a crime, get arrested, just so they could go and get food, get a roof over their head. I'd probably do the same thing too. Hell, if you don't have a job, if you don't have a family, what else? What have you got to lose, really? I mean, it might affect you if you're trying to get a job in the future with your record. But yeah, we had that happen a lot. There would be people that would get released, and they'd be back a couple days later. We used to call those like jailbirds, the frequent flyers. The people were constantly like in and out of there, and it was normally the homeless, and a lot of them have mental health issues. I think for a lot of these people it was really a shame. But these judges, they jail is not really rehabilitating. It's not therapeutic. A lot of these, like 65% of the inmates had mental health issues, whether it be depression, anger management, bipolar, schizophrenia, all that, and just mentally ill in general. They really needed to go to like nursing homes or mental homes, mental hospitals, halfway house things like that. That would be more beneficial. But a lot of these judges, some of these guys, they don't realize that because of their mental state, they don't understand, what they've done. They're not able to realize the consequences of their crimes, and judges tend to think that jail is the right answer, but in most cases, it's not. They need something better, something that can be rehabilitating. And as far as crazy story, like again, like a lot of mentally ill inmates. There was one inmate that constantly, he was homeless, and he was always like arrested for shoplifting. He never came in the wintertime, but he would steal like cigarettes from Walgreens. He would steal booze from liquor stores, and one day he actually got arrested. I guess he needed some clothes. He was clothed, but he needed some better clothes, so he went into Kohl's, and I guess he picked stuff out, like he got new shoes, pants, a shirt, a hat, and I guess he went into the dressing room and just walked down. Well, hell, he got past the metal detector, but he walked out, and maybe the metal detector did go off, and he just ended up, instead of waiting, he just ended up going outside. But he got arrested, and it was kind of funny in a way. Like they said that he still had like the price tags and all these clothes, and there was another guy that was mentally ill. Like he broke his glasses, and he actually, I think we had to do surgery on him to get the glass out, but like intestinal surgery. But he swallowed his eyeglasses, and they did an X-ray, and it was really, just the thought of that. He actually had, you could see on the X-ray, like this broken glass that was in his, trapped in his abdomen, his stomach. It was just, oh man, just the thought of that. And he was, every time he took a crap, they were basically like nurses, the paramedics were, EMTs were like picking through it and to see if he passed the glass through, but I think he wasn't able to pass it, so we ended up having to send him out for surgery. And there was also a guy, I guess he was trying to get out to the hospital instead of having to go to, yeah, a lot of them are, real quick to go out to the hospital because they get to take, better care there, better food. They get out of the jail environment. Yeah, so many of them are, trying to, ask us to send them to the hospital, and they say they have all this stuff wrong with them, like they feel that they're going to have a heart attack, and we check their vital signs, and everything's just fine. There was actually one guy, another guy who was mentally ill. He I think he was running from the police, and for whatever reason, like, he had some nails on him. I'm not sure how many nails, but I guess to go out to the hospital rather than going to jail, he's like, right at that moment he swallowed like a bunch of nails. And oh man, just the thought of that too. Oh my god, I can't imagine that. But he swallowed a bunch of nails, and he ended up telling them, the arresting officer, and they sent him out to the hospital too. And there was also another, I think this arresting officer might have gotten in big trouble, might have probably gotten fired, but they arrested this guy. They brought him in, but the officer obviously didn't pat him down. Luckily, he didn't. It could have been a mass shooting, but he got into the intake, like the booking area where you wait to be processed, and he actually had a gun on him, and that was really lucky that it didn't turn in. It could have turned into a mass shooting. And yeah, I think that police officer, ended up being fired because he arrested the guy, but he didn't pat him down. And what else? There was somehow, I don't know how it happened, but one of the inmates like somehow got in with a heroin syringe. I think they were doing like a shakedown, where they basically go through and they search the cells for contraband, and somehow like a syringe that was like filled with heroin got into the shower. I don't know how it got there. And this one woman, she should have been charged with manslaughter. Should have gotten 5 years in prison. This one woman was driving drunk, and she killed a guy, a motorcyclist, and she actually probably would have, you know, she still would have got in trouble. The guy probably would have lived, but I guess she got scared, so she just was basically a hit and run. The guy wasn't dead, but she got scared, getting in trouble, so she left and fled the scene, and the guy ended up dying. And I don't know why, but we had like some inmates, they were just like sentenced to minor crimes. They just did like weekends. Yeah, like there was one guy that, he worked Monday through Friday, and they would come, as soon as they got done with work on Friday, they would come in, check themselves in, and then they'd be let go on Sunday night to go back to work. They call that, work release too. There's some guys that actually went to work during the day, and then they reported back there as soon as they were done with work, that they were in there every day. And yeah, they go to work, get up, they go to work all day, then go straight back there. That was called work release. And then they had guys who were just in there on the weekends, which are called weekenders. But this woman, yeah, she killed somebody driving drunk, and I mean, she should have gone to prison, but I guess the judge for like a year only gave her weekends. And I don't know how it happened too, but one of the weekends, she like smuggled drugs into the place. I don't know, the arresting officer, or I think well, I mean, they're still supposed to be patted down by the correctional officers, searched, and they make them strip, and they make them squat down and cough in case they got anything stuck up their butt. And yeah, I don't know where she had the drugs, but she smuggled drugs into the place and was giving them to the other inmates. And so there was that, and then I think there was another. Oh yeah, there was another woman. She got arrested. I forget what she got arrested for, but she went extra charges. But I guess she had like $500 worth of drug money, and somehow she hid it. They thought that she was. I don't know where she hid it, but I guess when she was in the booking area, somebody noticed that she was kind of like crouching down, and it looked like she was shoving something up in her private area. And so they noticed, and they went to search her, and they couldn't. They were trying to get. They knew that she had something up there, and they're like, whatever it is, just pull out. And she's like, oh, she was trying to act like she was trying. She was faking it. She wasn't really trying. She was like pretending that she was trying. So they ended up sending her out to the hospital, and it's one of the funniest stories I ever heard. I guess she had like $500 worth of drug money up there, and they actually pulled it out and counted it. Like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine the smell, or if the money was wet and with her bodily fluids. Ugh. And There was another inmate, a guy. I guess he was in for murder, but he was trying to get like lesser of a sentence, maybe not to have to go to prison. And he faked it for a little while. He was trying to, get off on insanity. So there was one day he actually, I guess, I don't know if it was just one stool passing, but he like took a dump and I guess he rubbed like the defecation like all over his face and his arms, his hands, rubbed it all over the jail cell. And I guess after a while he admitted to the head psychiatrist. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry. He's like, I was trying to plead insanity. He's like, I can't fake it. I can't go through with it anymore. He's basically admitting that he's perfectly normal. And then we had two guys who were mentally ill. I guess they were in the same cell, and it was like a suicide pact. They took razors and they were try to kill each other. They were cutting each other all over, and it was funny because the officer that called in this, even it was life threatening, but he called the nurse, and he said, "Well, yeah, there's just two guys up here that have cuts." He's like, "He can come up and see them." And he didn't make it sound. He was new. I don't know if he kind of like freaked or didn't realize how serious it was. But the nurse went up there and she said like the whole room, the whole jail cell was like covered with blood spatter. And she's like, "Oh my God, like these guys have to go to the hospital. Why did you make this sound like it was nothing?" And it was kind of funny because both the guys survived. They sent them out to the hospital, got them treated. But then when they came back, one of the sergeants questioned them as to why they did this, and the one guy was honest. He's like, "Yeah, it was a suicide pact. We were trying to kill ourselves. We were trying to kill each other. We both wanted to die. It was a mutual agreement." But then the other guy wasn't admitting to it. He's like, "Oh, we just wanted to see who would bleed more." And there was another woman that, I guess it was a form of self-mutilation. I'd never heard of it, but she was actually like pulling her hair out and sticking it into her eyeballs. And I never heard of that before, but it's actually a form of self-mutilation. And I guess there was one guy that he got arrested, and he was so pissed off about being arrested that I guess he was like sticking like another form of self-mutilation, mentally ill too, but he was sticking his fingers up his butt and picking around, and he did this so long to the point that he started bleeding, like his rectum was bleeding all over the place. I think they had to send him out to the hospital and actually get him stitches. But yeah, not you occasionally you get some people that are, honest. They admit, they did something, they're normal people like, you and me. They admit, I'm stupid. I commit a crime. I'm willing to pay the price. A lot of them, are innocent. Oh, it's kind of like the Shawshank Redemption, totally. It's like, oh, I didn't do it, and some guys will admit like, oh, I did it, but it's, it's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault. Like there was one, guy that got a DUI. I guess his father was beating the shit out of him supposedly, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't have a choice. I was trying to get away from my father, and he said he got in his car and started driving away, and that's why he got a DUI." And especially all these guys that are in for like domestic battery to beat up their girlfriends, their wives. Oh yeah, it's always their fault. It's not that their wives, their girlfriends made them that angry. And I think there was one guy that, oh yeah, there was another story about a woman. She was mentally ill too. She actually got prison time, but wasn't the first time it happened. I mean, I guess supposedly she said that she grew up around a chemical plant, and she claimed that she was possessed by chemicals. It wasn't the first time it happened. I guess she was married to this guy. I'm not sure for how many years, but I guess back in 2002, that was 16 years ago. She tried to poison him in some way, poison his food or a drink or something like that, and I would right then there. I've been like, "Oh, I'm gonna divorce you. I'm no longer having any contact with you ever again. I would not want to be around somebody like that. I'd be afraid they'd do it again." And sure enough, I don't know what set her off. I don't know if she got mad at him or if it was just a mental illness kicking in. But we used to call her the smoothie girl because she actually poisoned. She tried to, or I guess she put some type of poison in her husband's smoothie, and I don't know if he started drinking it or if it looked or smelled funny, but yeah, one of the social workers there is like, "You know what, fool me once, shame on you, but you fool me twice, shame on me." And she ended up actually getting like 30 years or 20 years in prison for that, attempted murder. And yeah, definitely after first time. I would not want to be with somebody like that. And I can't believe that I don't know if he was, I think he might have been mentally ill too, I'm not sure, but I can't believe that he stuck with her. That would have been like an immediate divorce for me. And yeah, there's basically all kinds of characters in jail. Like there was like this one guy that let his teeth rot, and I guess a friend of his, yeah, he had this buddy that was a genius, and he told me that if I just let my teeth go to hell, he was hoping to get dentures. He's like, yeah, or false teeth. He's like, yeah, he had a buddy of mine that told me if I just let my teeth rot, that they would just eventually fall out, but his teeth are safe. He looked at a meth addict, his teeth were so gross. They were like chipped and crooked and missing teeth, and like the ones he still had were chipped and black. His breath was terrible. It was just, oh, so gross. I couldn't imagine being a dentist there. Some of the work these people needed done. But yeah, it's pretty cheap too for dental work and psychiatric care. It's amazing, you know. I mean, a lot of these guys, they're not even paying for it. It's their families. They're putting it on their books, and we can't refuse them. You know, we give them a negative balance. You know, we can't refuse them medical care, dental care, psychiatric care. A lot of them, you know, it's not them paying for it. It's like their friends or family members. They're putting this money in their books. But the thing is, if they have a negative balance, like for example, like if somebody, you know, has like $30 or he has like $100 in their books, and let's say they have like over the time that they're there, they have like $150 worth of, you know, care. We just give them a negative balance of $50, and we don't make them pay that out, you know, before, you know, sometimes they get away without paying if they never come back. So say somebody leaves and they got like a negative balance of $50, okay, they don't have to pay for that unless they come back, then it gets reinstated. So for example, if somebody has a negative balance of $50 and they come back, so let's say somebody puts $100 in their books, technically it gets $50 gets reinstated in negative balance, so technically they only have $50 in their books. And you would believe how often, even, you know, $10 to see a dentist, a doctor, a nurse, you know, such cheap medical care. And you wouldn't believe how often they would complain about that, but I guess their commissary, like their food, their junk food, like their Cheetos and their Doritos and things like, you know, candy, you know, Skittles, stuff like that is more important to them. And now if they do have a negative balance, they're not able to order any commissary. And yeah, I think getting my medical care would be more important than eating that damn junk food. And so yeah, you wouldn't believe how many of them, you know, the charges got missed. Like there was one guy that was complaining about being overcharged for $5, and the nurse or the medical administrator is like, "Oh yeah, let me look at your file. Let me take a look and see if you got overcharged $5." Well, it turns out he did actually get overcharged $5, but he had like $50 of other charges that weren't, you know, put on his account. So he ended up like having to pay like 45. He was so pissed off about that. So, you know, he's even one of the administrators. You know, sometimes she would warn them that, you know, she would find extra charges. She's like, you know, if I were you, I would just keep your mouth shut about that $5 because more than likely I'm gonna go for some reason. You know, the people just weren't charging the inmates right, weren't noting things right, and she said, you know, you can. You know, if I were you, I'd keep my mouth shut about $5 because I'll probably go. I guarantee you, I'll probably go through your file and find like $50 worth of, you know, medical care you weren't billed for. So, you know, choice is yours. And you know, one guy you still have to pay. Even if you get a cheap lawyer, you know, you still have to pay like you know, small court claim fees, which could be like a couple $1,000s. You know, this one guy was complaining about being overcharged. He was already released. And he was complaining about to the administrator about being overcharged $5, and you know, he said that he was going to sue us. He was going to sue her, and she said something like, "Okay," he's like, "I'm going to get a lawyer," and she's like, "Okay, well, if you get a lawyer, like, do you realize, you know, how much it's probably going to cost you? A couple $1,000s, you know, in court fees?" And he's like, "Oh, that's not the point. It's the principle." I think he was a little mentally ill too, and yeah, all sorts of characters again. There was another funny story too. This guy, like, he was mentally ill. Like, he would flush. He was always flooding his toilet. Like, he would flush like his shower towels down the toilet. He thought that somebody was he was actually drinking the toilet water because he didn't want to drink the water out of the sink. Or he didn't want to drink like the lemonade or the Kool-Aid, the coffee they gave him. I guess he was afraid it was poisoned. And yeah, he was drinking the toilet water. and he was constantly like masturbating, like right in front of us, like. Um, I guess he didn't have a problem with the guys, or he had a problem with the guys being around. Like if a guy caught him doing it, I guess it would ruin his mood. But like if any female was around, like a nurse, like he would be standing by his cell, like watching these nurses with his equipment in his hand, and the nurses, when social workers, female nurses would not talk to him, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna talk to you unless you have sex with me," and he's like, I feel so bad, like I want to slip my dick in a bitch," and he wouldn't take, he stunk so bad, like they would have to force him to take showers, and he was like the only inmate they actually did favors for. Like they would actually give him coffee. I drink iced tea with a lemon, and one day he saw me squeezing a lemon into, he would use a lemon wedge as like a shampoo or soap. He, like you said, he was so mentally ill, and but yet he managed to make drug deals. He was a drug dealer on the outside. um, yeah, he saw me squeezing like half of a lemon into my iced tea, and they actually gave him a lemon wedge one day to take a shower with. He's like, "Oh, I want to use the lemon wedge to wash myself." He said it cleanses the body, mind, and soul. And they said, "Well, that's what it takes to get him in the shower. I guess we'll do it." And they used to give him coffee. Yeah, they used to give him lemons, and I think they used to give him so extra food, extra snacks too, just as an incentive to get him into the shower. Because one day they actually had to force him in and watch him shower. But yeah, it's really a shame. A lot of these inmates, they weren't really brought up well. A lot of them from poverty. I mean, kind of like drug dealing. A lot of them, because due to just moderate means or very poor means, and you end up just stealing and committing crime, drug deals, to get by in life. And a lot of them, they admit, once they get out, they said they know they won't be able to get a job. I'm just going to have to go back to, drug dealing again. I'm going to have to go back to the same thing. And it's really kind of funny in a way, like the drug dealers we had in there, like you wouldn't believe how many of them. I don't know if it's like they think they won't get caught that way, but so many of them, it would like note that they were doing drug distribution and have their charges listed, but it would say that they, did it at a church property or a school property. I guess that's supposedly like a good cover. Like, oh, I don't know, why would anybody sell drugs at a church? But I guess that's where a lot of them make their deals at, government properties, like, schools and churches, things like that. And yeah, it's just amazing. There was one guy that I think he had a shattered ankle, and he had a warrant, I think, for drug distribution, and the cops showed up at his house. He knew the cops were there, and I guess he went out the back door, and he was on crutches, and I guess he got like maybe two lots, like two houses over, before they caught him. And then there was another guy that tried to commit suicide by cutting his wrist with cutting through his wrist with a chainsaw, and I guess the chainsaw like broke, like ran out of gas. He started to cut a little bit, and then I guess he tried to bite off the rest of the way. And along with the inmates, there were a lot of employees there were kind of wacko too. Especially in the mental health department, there was one social worker that she was really scary. She ended up getting fired. People were pretty scared of her. She wasn't doing her job, and she was just really wacky. I mean, even her first day there, just swearing up a storm, and in front of everybody, just didn't make us look too good. I guess their first encounter, I guess she had with an inmate. Inmate was like going off on her, and she was just swearing like that inmate's such a fucking bitch, such a fucking cunt. Like, who the hell does she think she is? And she's saying it's like right in front of like sergeants, lieutenants, other inmates walking down the hall. I'm like, just calm down, like, just save it until until we get back in private. Like, I don't want you to be, it doesn't look good for you for your first day to be swearing in front of all these people. You gotta make a good impression at first. And a lot of the correctional officers too were, characters, the sergeants and lieutenants. There was a lot of playing around that went on, especially with the nurses, the EMTs, the paramedics. I mean, there were a lot of, marriage didn't mean anything there. There were a lot of officers that were married, that were cheating on their wives, and nurses were married too, and it went on so much there. Over the years, so many affairs. And there were two, I'm not sure if they're still best friends anymore, but there were two officers there on the same shift that were actually best friends. And I think the sheriff ended up firing his secretary. He was the sheriff's secretary. She was married to one of the correctional officers there, and she ended up having an affair with her husband's best friend, who was also a corrections officer there. Now, both the officers are still there, but she ended up getting fired. The sheriff fired her, and I wonder if that had something to do with it. He fired his own secretary, and I saw a lot of it too. There was a GED teacher that ended up getting fired. I guess she developed a relationship with one of the inmates. He ended up going to prison, and I guess she was writing him, putting money on his books, and there was a mail lady too that was doing special favors for an inmate. I think putting money on his books, and yeah, this one GED teacher, she ended up getting fired because when these guys were on the outs, like some of them didn't finish because they had GED program. Some of them like didn't finish their GEDs there, and she was actually seeing these inmates on the outside, like inviting them over to her house. I mean, still they're on the outside. They were incarcerated at the time, but still, I wouldn't want people like that knowing where I live, letting them into my house. And for whatever reason, I guess she ended up getting beat up by one of the former inmates, and she pressed charges. She reported it, and I guess that's how the county found out, and they ended up firing her. And we also had a nurse that was developed a relationship with the inmate when he was on the outside. I guess she was posting pictures of him on Facebook, and somebody reported it to the commander, and she ended up getting fired. And there was also another nurse that developed a relationship with an inmate, and they were on the outside. And I guess they got in. She was driving. The nurse was driving, and they ended up getting in some argument. And she stopped the car. She, I don't know if she feared for her safety, for her life, whatever. She said, "Get out, get out! Like I'm done with you." And he was refusing to get out of the car. He said, "No, I'm not getting out. Take me home." And she said, "No, I want you out now." So she called the police, and the police showed up, and they were questioning them both. And I guess he asked how they knew each other, and he ended up. It turns out this officer was like best friends with our county sheriff, and he said like, "Oh, I was an inmate at the King County Jail, and he's like, my girlfriend is a nurse there. That's how I met her." So right then and there, that police officer later on got on the phone with the sheriff, who was his best friend, and basically he's like, "Yeah, one of your nurses is in a relationship with an inmate on the outside, and she ended up getting fired." And she still continued on. This guy, was a drug dealer. He ended up getting arrested over and over again, and now he's in prison for a real long time. But yeah, she was going there to visit him, and putting money in his books after she got fired, and and he was treating her like such a slut. I guess like all the calls are monitored. They talk on video monitors, so they don't actually they can't touch each other. They can't actually see each other in person. And I guess I think it does an officer sit in the room too with or standing there and monitor the visits. But I guess she showed up to visit him, and he's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "I knew my bitch would come to see me sooner or later." And he saw her from the front, but he's like, "Oh yeah, turn around, I want to see your ass," And I'm like, I can't believe that she would allow him to, she would allow a man. I guess she liked that in a way, to be looked at and treated like a piece of meat. I can't imagine. There are not too many women out there like that. I've known some very slight women that don't want to be treated like a piece of meat like that, but yeah, definitely amazing. Like I said, I worked there for 10 years, and every day was completely different. Like I said, I have a different outlook on society now. I never knew that these kinds of people existed, but yeah, it definitely is real. I There were some inmates that actually made me nervous. By the way they were acting. Like I never got correctional officers is a different story. But normally in the medical department, you have a lot of them are drug seekers, so it's like you have something that you want. So I usually treat the medical people pretty nice. There were some inmates that got agitated where I never feared for my life, and I never feared that I was going to get physically harmed. But I kind of don't really have a thick skin. So sometimes I was worried about what they were going to say to me, and sometimes I got down about things they said to me if they were nasty or they went off on me. But people are telling me like, "Oh, I feel like who gives a shit what they think about you? You're in they're in jail." And even my friend was a nurse. Sometimes they used to talk shit to her, and about this and that, whatever. And she would piss them off. she'd be like, well, you can say what you want to about me, but you know what? She's like, I get to go home at night, and oh, did that really set them off? She's like, hey, I just come here, I work my 8 hours, but she's like, unlike you, like, I'm not stuck here day in and day out. I actually get to go home at night and live an enjoyable life, and boy, did that piss them off, did that shut them up. And I never, I think, had a issue. I think when I first started working there, because we had a lot of repeat offenders, they kind of tried to walk all over me. But once I learned the ropes, learned the scoop, the rules, they realized that they couldn't get away with, shit with me. They like to manipulate the new people. And but yeah, as time went on, yeah, they didn't even try to mess with me anymore. But I think that was, I said to that nurse, oh yeah, that's good. I said if anybody talks shit to me, I'll just say, oh yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna have myself a beer and a big fat juicy steak, medium rare, a baked potato, butter and sour cream, some roasted asparagus. But I was so looking forward to using that kind of dialogue, that quote, that script. But yeah, it never came to that point. They knew me. They got to know me pretty quick, and I guess it did get a thicker skin. It did get tougher and knew the ropes. And after it didn't take long for them to realize, after a couple years, my repeat offenders, they knew that they weren't going to be able to get away with anything with me. So yeah, that's I think I summed up. I could sit here and talk all day about every single story that I came across, but yeah, I gave you the gist of some of the best stories that I remember in 10 years of my time there. So yeah, it's definitely quite an experience. It was never boring, never boring. Always something exciting, something to laugh at. Always, even my wife, she at one point got like tired of the stories. She's like, I can tell you like this job so much, and she's like, I've never seen you have a job. Normally when you have a job, you come home, you don't talk about it all. But she's like, you actually won't shut up about this job, so I can tell you like it. And there are just times like, I don't want to hear any more of these stories, and like I just want to spend time with you and do talk, do something else. So yeah, it's definitely an experience. Never been incarcerated, but yeah, definitely working there for 10 years, I kind of got the scoop somewhat of what it was like, and yeah, definitely interesting. Now, the other thing I want to talk about was one last thing I want to talk about was the food allergies. A lot of them would come into food. They didn't realize how much like soy is in the junk food, because they did serve like a lot of cheap stuff like bologna and salty stuff, stuff that had like soy in it. And a lot of them would say that they're allergic to bolognas. I think it's pretty nasty. I don't like bologna, and it's really salty. And I think bologna has some type of soy product in it. So I'm going to say that they're allergic to soy, so they wouldn't get bologna. But then they would try to order commissary. At first we would backtrack, because they could come in, they do changes with taste, and their taste would change, and they say, oh, I'm no longer allergic to soy. But it got to the point where, no, you tell us you have a food allergy, we're going to stick with it. If someone, for whatever reason, like they'd say, oh, I'm lactose intolerant, because they didn't want dairy products, they wanted like orange juice instead, and then they got tired of the juice, like, oh, I'm no longer lactose intolerant. Like, yeah, bullshit. But yeah, you wouldn't believe like Cheetos and like those flaming hot Cheetos, cheese balls, all that stuff. Potato chips, Doritos. You wouldn't believe like how much of that junk food actually has soy in it. So a lot of them they'd say allergic to soy because they didn't want bologna, but then they realized, because they said that their soy allergy would still be on record, and they wouldn't be able to get all this junk food that they wanted. Oh man, did they get pissed about that? And like I said, when I first started working there, we used to go back on there. If they said, oh, I'm no longer allergic to soy, I'm not really allergic to soy, I just don't want bologna, we would cater to them. But then we stopped doing that. Like, no, you tell us you're allergic to, whatever, we're going to keep it on record. We're not backtracking. So yeah, definitely like this video. If you like it, comment, subscribe, and get me more views. And if you have, like I said, comment if you have any questions. I could pretty much answer a lot of the questions you might have about jail. And it's definitely an experience. I never knew these kinds of people existed in the world. Every day I could come home with a different story, something I never heard or seen of before. So yeah, that's I'm gonna wrap the video up. It was definitely quite an experience, and yeah, basically I think I gave you some of the best stories that I had, the best stories I can remember. And yeah, I definitely have more, but I'd be here talking all day. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all very soon with another interesting topic. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.